it was straight through that small little mindset shift to becoming more productive and more and an assistant principal and a principal, and now what I do today. And all of that was from that small little mindset shift of I just want to know more without any judgment, without any, criticism. It's just, I just want to learn more. And it started from there and to where I am today.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why? Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Dovid Azerad. Dovid is a transformational architect who specializes in helping high achievers escape the limiting stall cycle and reach peak performance through his elite performance integration framework. Dovid, I want to stop there because I think we're going to talk a lot about this stuff and talk a lot about what's in your bio. First, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for taking the time out to be a guest and come share with my audience. I really appreciate having you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start with just kind of your background, tell people about yourself, and then, kind of we'll dive in from there.
Sure. So my history goes back more than 10 years, a little more than 10 years. I started off as a classroom teacher, and I worked my way through the schooling educational industry, becoming an administrator and an assistant principal, a principal. And one of the biggest challenges that are had in the educational field is really helping the children to really realize their full potential and not keep them boxed in to what the school's rigid structure is. And whatever school the child is in, almost any school is going to have a box, and they're going to want the child to fit into the box. And if the child is stepping their toe out of the box, then now that's cause for alarm. And that's really, if we think about it, is that really the best path for children? Because as we know, in adults, I would say the most successful people are the ones that are sticking their toes out of the box and breaking things and coming up with new ways to do things. And here we are taking children with a natural tendency to do that and telling them, no, you have to do it differently in a more limited way. And that's very, very challenging because, as any good educator would tell you, that's really antithetical to what they're trying to accomplish. They want children to thrive. We all want children to thrive. If we're a parent, we want our children to thrive. We want them to feel good. We want them to love learning. We want them to be curious. And unfortunately, the system doesn't lend itself to that. So as I was going through my journey as an educator, I sort of hit a wall where I was one of those teachers that was like, no, you have to be in the box, and I have to get through my material. And if you're not letting me do that, then now you're in trouble. And I had an epiphany. And that epiphany was start being curious. And instead of vilifying or demonizing anything that the children were doing that was not part of the classroom structure, I just became curious about it. And if a child called out, if they wanted, if they asked me a question that was not relevant, non sequitur, so instead of being like, oh, we're not talking about that, I'll be like, oh, why do you ask me that? And within a few weeks, and this was in a middle school class, which is pretty challenging, and within a few weeks, they were all on board. They were all learning. They were all curious. They were loving life, loving class. And it was one small change that I made. It was my mindset of just becoming curious. And when I was doing that, it really transformed me and led me down a path that now, 10 years later, I look back and I think to myself, it's like, wow, like that one tiny little change changed everything. And it literally led me, and it was straight through that small little mindset shift to becoming more productive and more and an assistant principal and a principal, and now what I do today. And all of that was from that small little mindset shift of, I just want to know more without any judgment, without any, criticism. It's just, I just want to learn more. And it started from there and to where I am today. And it's such an incredible thing how you can really just make that small little shift. And if you stick to it and you really put your mind to it and put your effort into it, and obviously it's not, all roses as you go through that journey, because you start facing yourself. And when you face yourself, that's where curiosity sort of shuts off. It's just like, no, I need to criticize myself, and I need to criticize myself and judge myself and tell myself I'm not good enough or whatever it is. Actually, I'm not good enough. That, I don't know if you saw Inside Out 2. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a powerful, powerful. I was tearing up at the end of
Oh
that
yeah.
movie. Yeah, it was
Haven't seen it, but
okay.
need to check it
I'm not
out.
gonna spoil it for you, but that's a powerful movie. And so is Inside Out 1, but they didn't lower the quality for number 2. Usually sequels are, not the best, but this one was good. So not going to spoil it, but powerful stuff, and it's so interesting to really realize that as you go through the journey and just start enjoying the journey, and not be critical about it and judgmental about it, and you can really become anything you want to be, and you can really do anything you want to do if you keep that open mind, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered
No,
your question. I sort of went on a tangent, but
it's okay. There's no wrong answers. No, it's so I have young kids. I've never been like a teacher in the school system or whatever, but I went through, public schooling, a lot of schooling. And yeah, I do think there is a lot of about, kind of fitting in a box. And people talk a lot about it, what the if the there's tends to be a lot of negative said about, kind of the school system and things like that. And I think there's I love what you said, because I do think that there's a place to be able to foster that curiosity and let them be kind of outside that box a little bit. I think, they have to get through the day and the year, and so there has to be some structure. But it but I think structure is good for some kids too. But the part about, like, you talking about, sort of letting them explore those things and be curious without judgment. I really love that. I have kids. They're 5 and 3, and I think I didn't realize until I had them um, how much of that curiosity had been stripped away, right? Like, just in life,
yeah.
basically. Right? Like, you just don't. It wasn't like it was on purpose. I think it's just, kind of what life can do to you, and I have rediscovered a lot of that with them. And, like, it's very important to me that I don't just shut down their ideas, and I don't just, that doesn't matter right now, that kind of thing that we tend to do when we get in a hurry or busy or whatever. It's like, we don't need to talk about that right now. I don't tell, my son, he's 5, he still thinks, I think he still thinks he's going to be a dinosaur when he grows up. And I'm like, all right, keep that. Uh, there's going to be plenty of people out there that tell kids that they can't. And it doesn't need to be us as parents, and it doesn't need to be teachers. Like, we should be the ones, like you said, like the ones that want them to thrive and be, kind of, um, more than just, little soldiers that fall in line. I think it's really important concept. So, very exciting topic. And when you said you got sort of to the principal level. Are you still doing that, or did you transition? What kind of happened next for you once you made that realization?
So I am not currently a principal anymore. Now I am full time. I am a transformation coach, and that transition happened last year, and it's been tremendously gratifying to be able to do that. The transition happened. It was sort of organic in the way that I was speaking with a lot of parents and students, but parents and adults and vendors and people that have community members of the school community, and we would chat. And while we were chatting, I, as an educator, A, want to learn more, and B, want to help people. So I'm just like, tell me more about what you do. How do you do it? Oh, what if you would do it this way? What if you would do it that way? How about, why do you think this way? And at the end of the conversations, people would say things like, wow, that was really helpful. Thanks. And things like that. And
Yeah.
then I would be like, I mean, sure, happy to help. And then some people would say things like, oh, you should be a coach. And I would say, I'm pretty busy right now, have a job and not really
Yeah.
thinking about that stuff. But then I was hearing it more often. And as I heard it more often, I was started to think to myself, maybe I should. So I started, putting out feelers and reaching out to people. And I started getting a lot of positive feedback about it and a lot of experience and a lot of great results with different people. And I basically just decided, just let's jump in, and it's been great. It's been fun.
Yeah. That's great. And I think it's nice because coaching has become, I think, much more like accepted or whatever it's not this sort of
Taboo.
yeah, exactly. It's like it's not hidden anymore. It's like people have coaches, and it helps, in business and life and relationships. I mean, there's
Hmm.
a lot of opportunity to get help and have people that have an expertise be a part of your life. And so it's nice that people encourage you to do that, and sort of able to find that path. Your bio talks about sort of escaping the stall cycle. And so that's, right at the beginning of it. What does that mean to you? How would you define that?
Great question. So whenever we're operating as an operator, a lot of times we fall in, and it doesn't have to be in business. It could be in parenting. It could be in education, but
Yeah.
we usually realize it in business because there are tangible and deliverables that have to be done. So it's sort of like is a flashing sign that's like, hey, you're not accomplishing what you want to be accomplishing,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to in other realms of life. But it's all connected. It's all connected because it's sort of like who we are, and how we show up in different contexts. But the general idea is that when we fall into these cycles, where we receive information, we're taking in information as we go along the day, but we're not curious about it. We're just taking it in, and then we're reacting to that information. Again, we're sort of on autopilot, and then after we react to that information, we receive new information. It's the result of that action, and then we continue that cycle of receiving it, reacting to it, and then repeating the cycle. And that cycle doesn't lend itself to growth. It lends itself to staying within the status quo that we have right now. We're receiving the information, reacting to it, and repeating it, and receiving and reacting and repeating. And that's where we find ourselves burning out. We find ourselves overworking, working hard, and hardly working, and it just becomes a really. And then we look at whenever we have that moment, when we're like looking back, let's say at 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is, and we're just like, what did I accomplish today, or what did I accomplish at the end of the month, or at the end of the quarter, or at the end of the year? And it's like I didn't really do anything that I wanted to, or I did a tiny little bit of it, but I did a lot of things, but I don't know what I accomplished. And that sort of makes us feel bad about ourselves. And we're just like, that's terrible. And then the next day we go back to work and we maybe do it for another 5 minutes. We like say, we're going to do it differently. And then the secretary comes or some VP comes or someone shows up and it's just like, oh, back to the grind. And we're like, okay, till next time. Sort of like a New Year's resolution. And we just find ourselves stuck and stalled. And that's why I named it that. And it's a very disempowering feeling to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the the fact you use the term, reacting or being like, I think that is such a common place to be, right? Be whether it's in business or relationships, or parenting, whatever. You can always be. It is, I think, probably the norm in a way, in that we tend to be always in that reactive cycle to whatever's going on. And it is, I like that, sort of reference to the stall, because it's very hard to get out of it. It's very hard to kind of see, one, recognize that you're in that cycle of just always reacting to whatever happens instead of, sort of getting out ahead of it. Um, but then, yeah, hard to sort of change that mindset. So what do you what do you do with people? How do you coach them in the sense of like, sort of recognizing that they're in that cycle, and then what steps do you offer to them to take it to start to kind of change that mindset?
How meta are we getting today? Like, how deep are we going? Like, is
as
like a
as much as
practical
you want.
level?
Like I said, there are no wrong answers. You can,
Okay.
this is really
Okay, ask the
very much
question again
about,
because I was sort of like I had like three different answers lined up and I didn't know which one to go with. So I'm just gonna go with whatever is intuitively gonna be the right one over here. So, or
yeah.
maybe
So
all of
I
them.
mean, the question is, first, I think self-awareness is lacking in a lot of people, and probably because we get in that stall cycle where you're just like, I'm just trying to survive almost.
Hmm.
So how do you sort of help people recognize that they're in a cycle of just reactivity, and then also, what would be some steps that you start them with to help kind of turn that ship around?
It's a very loaded question because we use phrases in ways that are ironic. For example, you use the word self to term self-awareness, right? And we say like, oh, people lack self-awareness. But if you took someone and backed them up against the wall and said and said just like really, really held them there against their will and said, tell me about yourself, tell me about your challenges, tell me about your goals, tell me all about yourself. They have self awareness. They know exactly what they wish they had. They know exactly what they want to be doing. They know
Yeah.
exactly what they are doing and what they're not doing. And they know all of this. So the question is, why aren't we doing it? Why are we stuck in this cycle
Yeah.
if we now we're going to say we don't have the self awareness to get out of it? So that's where like words are really limiting because it's true what you said. They don't have self awareness in the moment, but deep down somewhere inside they have self-awareness, so it's very tricky. And I think the tricky thing here is and is communicating it, but in practical application of it, if we realize that there's always two sides to the coin, where when we say something like someone doesn't have self-awareness, we have to qualify it right now or in this context, or even if someone does have self-awareness in this context, in he has presence or she has presence now, she's not being present now, she's being she's courageous when it comes to certain contexts. So when we're able to now move aside the nitty gritty of you know the day-to-day operations or the day-to-day interactions and relationships, and we talk about and we say zoom out, and now let's just look at your whole mental and your whole emotional map and atlas and all the things that are going on inside of you, and now start observing. And there's actually a great book, and I was talking about this with another person a few days ago. um, it's called The Inner Game of Tennis, which I'm sure maybe you've heard of it, but I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. It's a great book. It's like 50 years old actually, and he goes through a certain concept which I would love to chat with him more about it because I would say that I don't really understand one small aspect of it just in the way that I relate to the world, but the general idea is we criticize constantly without even realizing it. We judge constantly without even realizing it. But if we would just take a step back and just observe and report, then we would intuitively and subconsciously be able to navigate much better. And he gives an example in tennis where you have a tennis student that's like, oh, I'm not lifting my arm good enough, or I'm not swinging my racket over well enough. And then they are judging themselves every time that they're going through the motion. Excuse me. So the conscious mind is now telling the subconscious what to do. And that won't work because the subconscious is fighting with the conscious mind. The conscious mind is like, no, you do what I tell you. And it's like, okay. And they'll never, I mean, maybe after a while they will. But if you would just take a step back, shift your conscious focus somewhere else. He says to like his students, for example, he says like, hey, just look at the line ahead and then just swing without thinking about it. And after 2, 3 swings, they're suddenly swinging well. So he says, what's the greatness about that idea? And this is really where what I work with people on and walk people through happens to be I read the book relatively recently, but this is nice validation. So when you just take a step back on yourself, like we're stuck in our problems, but if we take a step back and we just observe it, observe our inner world, don't think about it because thinking is conscious, but just observe it and listen to ourselves and see ourselves again, not judging, not criticizing, not observing. And sometimes we're going to come up with things that will make ourselves really, really like shaken. They will shake us because it's sort of like paradigm shifting by the way that we act and the way that we are really, really different. And to go from here, what we're doing, and then really getting to what we really want to be and what we really want to do, that's really shut down by, like you said, the day to day of whether you're parenting, whether you're running a business, whether you're just hanging out with friends or whatever it is, that will to get from there to there is the journey. It never ends because it just never ends. Life is about working on ourselves and
Yeah.
enjoying the journey of it. But it's amazing by how limited and how limiting we are ourselves by the fact that we don't take that step back and just observe and just see and just be, like you said now, self aware, but not self judgmental, not self critical, not anything like that. Just aware, just knowing, shining a light on it. And when we're shining a light on it, we open up ourselves to a much greater power that's within us than just the conscious mind that we usually use to navigate through life. That was pretty meta, I think, but that was the answer that came out.
That's good. So I guess my question, like follow up question to that is okay. So if you want to step, because I'm fine with getting really deep and everything, but I also I've always found that I wanted I suppose tactical advice, right? So like the idea of having coaches and therapists and all of that, and I know it's not always the same thing, but like
Mhm.
in general, I resonate with the idea of like, okay, here let's get to the root of, as you said, like observing and not being judgmental, but then how do you sort of stop doing, how do you use that as a tool in the day-to-day life if you're in that stall cycle and you're like, okay, I need to step back and observe, but then what do I take from that and apply it, kind of moving forward?
It's a great question. And I would say that I'm like trying to really put it in a nice box because I'm going in one direction in my head. I'm just going to talk and you tell me if
Yeah.
I go off topic and tangential, you just say, stop, wait, you're not answering the question. So
Yeah.
the first thing that
Okay.
we have to remember is that we have to be compassionate to ourselves, right? We always think about, especially as leaders, this is the new thing that I've started seeing all over. It's sort of like a whiplash effect from the past couple of years of people just being results driven, growth oriented. And now I'm starting to see thought leaders talk about kindness and compassion because it's sort of, I guess, the whiplash of what they used to talk about of just like, grind, 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 grind,
Yeah.
grind
Yeah.
everyone to dust. And now it's like, but now you have to be compassionate because remember all the grinding that you were doing. Now you just have shards of waste behind you. So now we have to remember not just to be compassionate to our employees and to our family members and to our friends. We also have to be compassionate to ourselves. Where when we're judging ourselves and we say something like, we can't be judging ourselves. Well, guess what? You're judging the judgy part. So you're perpetuating the cycle because the judging part is like, no, it's important. We have to be critical about ourselves. We have to be the best that we can be, and that's all true. So we have to just remember that this judgment that showed up, that was like, whoa, we're stuck in the stall cycle. We can't be doing this. And then we're like, okay, there's a reason we're in the stall cycle because we're surviving. So thank you that we're in the stall cycle. Now we can try to experiment and learn more about how to break out of it, just because and only because the stall cycle is not our values are. Our values are really something else, and we're doing something that's stalling, but not resolve. Not, I don't want to say the word resolving, because a stall cycle is resolving something. Something if you want to go into the therapeutic route, but if you want to now thrive and do something different and grow, so the stall cycle is not helping for that. So we have to remember that it's a good thing. Whatever we do, we have to be compassionate to ourselves and empathetic and realize that we're doing our best. That's step one to anything. We're doing our best. Our friends are doing their best. Our family members are doing their best. And again, now we want to go to the therapeutic route. Even if they do things that are objectively terrible, they are doing their best to navigate the world that they live in. Even if maybe we shouldn't be friends with them after that, still they're doing their best. And that's where we don't have to be, judgmental about it. It's just, okay, I can't, it's boundaries. Like I can't be your friend if you're going to do X, Y, and Z. I feel bad, but it's just the way it is. So we have to remember that we're all doing our best. So when we really internalize that, and even that also making sure that it's not judgmental, it's just observing everything that's going on and remembering we want to do our best. And I accept anything that shows up inside me and inside everyone else. And now when we keep that in mind, now we're able to be more curious. And curiosity really is the key to everything. And we started off over there, and you mentioned, how you're more present with your children when you're more curious, right? And it's really all about curiosity. Children have, like, we look at a baby. Why is it that, like, when we hold our baby, if we have one, and if you don't, if you see someone else's baby, if you're not child free, I guess, but if you see a baby and it's like, it makes you feel like a certain growing, like, sense of fullness of and like such a great feeling of just like wrapped, right? What is it? What is it about a baby? Babies are just unbiased, untarnished by all the things that we as adults and children have gone through. They're just pure. And what is that pure feeling? They're curious, they're courageous. When they start to learn how to walk, like, they fall, they get up, they fall, they get up, they fall, they get up, they eat, they take the spoon, stick it in their eyes. Like, they're just going, and they're like, we're gonna learn more about the world around us. We're gonna try to get more. They're so loving. If you see a baby or a toddler and they see two people arguing, they're gonna try to fix it. They're so compassionate, right? And they're just so pure. So as adults, if we can tap into those characteristics, right? And curiosity is the key, because it's the one that's easiest and the shortest path, the shortest fuse to trigger. Because if we say, okay, I'm going to be more compassionate, well, compassion really triggers a lot of different parts that are like, well, I have to protect myself, or I have to protect something, or manage something. So I can't be compassionate because the guy needs to do what he needs to do, my employee, or I need to do what I need to do as a human being. So it's harder. But if we're curious, then we can still sort of keep going on the path that we're on, but just keeping our eyes open and our ears open and being more observational and saying, I want to know more. I want to learn more about this, about why I'm doing this, where I do this, how I do this, how he's doing it, how she's doing it, or whatever it is. And it automatically is it's like a hard right off of that out of that cycle, out of that loop. Because when you're receiving the information, before you receive the information, you can be curious. You can be like, okay, whatever I take today, I'm going to learn. So somebody comes in and tells you something that makes your blood boil, but you remember, why is he saying that? Let me ask, why do you say that? Or what do we learn from this? Or how can we move forward from this? All of these are curious questions. And when we ask those questions, whether it's to ourselves or whether it's to someone else, it immediately like lowers the boiling point. Like immediately, it's like magic. It's like goes down. And that is one hard exit off of that. So the first thing is we have to remember is just be compassionate, empathetic, no matter what shows up. we're going to be neutral, observational, and try to learn more, be curious about what's happening. And that's the first exit off of that cycle. There's more. Then the next one is once let's say you received the information and you got angry and you did something, right? So now before you repeat the cycle, you have to take a pause. You did something, right? So now just pause. Okay? I took this information in, my blood started boiling, just pause. Can I take that moment? Maybe you can trigger the curiosity out. Just take a moment, be mindful, feel your breath going in and out. Touch your if I'm sitting now, I'll like put my hands on my legs and I'll just like feel my leg and I'll feel my feet touching the floor and feel my toes, in my shoes and just breathe and be mindful and present. And when we find that presence, it also will lower the toxicity level, lower the energy level, and it really helps us to find that space for us to now be more curious again. And then that's the second exit. And the third exit is, let's say we got the information, then we did something that was counterproductive, not objectively, right? We're trying to resolve things, but it's counterproductive objectively. Now this is the hardest because we might need to undo something. We might need to show up in a way that's really, really, really embarrassing for ourselves. We might need to apologize. Like, that's crazy, to show up and say, like, I'm sorry that I did that. I should not have yelled at you, or I should not have, sent that angry email to you, and I should not have hurt your feelings, or whatever it was. But genuinely show up. That's courageous. That's really challenging. So either one of these three exits are possible. I recommend the first one or the second or the third one, but the first one's the easiest. You want to try to break a cycle. You want to try to be more present. You want to try to do anything differently. Just be more curious, and it helps in any context. If let's say you're starting a new business, if you're starting a new business and you show up and like, well, I know everything. I know exactly how to run a business, and you're probably not. I mean, it depends how experienced you are. You might get to a certain level, but you will not be the most successful person that you could be. I saw a great video with Elon Musk that there was a guy that interviewed him, and he asked him a question. He asked him about how he does the rocket propulsion. I'm not, it's not my profession, so I don't know the exact details. And Elon Musk was like, "Oh no, we don't do it that way." But he like did this like pause, and he thought to himself, and he said, "But why don't we do it that way? Well, we should do it that way." I think I'm going to go work on that. The guy was maybe 25 years old. I don't know how old the guy is. A YouTube channel guy, influencer, and he's just like asked him a question, and he just was curious about it. And then I don't know how many months later, after they did their experiment and it went well, Elon said, it was only because you asked me that question, like, it changed everything. Like, imagine like someone that has no experience shows up and asks you a question. If you're not ready to be curious, you'll just miss it. You'll just be like, oh, I know better. Like, I've done this for 20 years. Yeah. Like, I don't need you to ask me these questions. But if we show up with curiosity, we can change everything. And that really is the key.
Yeah. And I think the question that sort of comes to my head, you talked about that sort of grinding hustle culture that has been, it's prevalent, especially on social media, and I would say I've even been a part of it at times. That to being a high achiever, there's a lot of that, but yeah, there's like that cycle. Again, I think a lot of this is driven by social media, but it's like you have the grind culture, and then you have now like, let's be kind and compassionate, because who knows what makes it all shift. But like, the question is, do you think that someone can be a high achiever and also non-judgmental, kind, empathetic, kind of be I guess, sort of all of that wrapped into one? I have a feeling you're going to say yes, but I wondered if you would say, kind of talk about how do you balance all that, and maybe it is with curiosity, but I think that's always a question that I have. Is this like I want to be, I want to be kind and compassionate and curious. Also, I want to do big things, and it's like I certainly think that the curiosity helps a lot. Like being completely willing to just um, entertain whatever question and just think about like, is there a better way, a different way of doing things like that. But so I wanted to kind of get your take on that. Like, how do you apply this to someone who's, wants to do big things in business, or it doesn't even have to be business. Again, it's just, want to be the best parent I can be, want to be the best husband I can be, whatever it might be.
It's it's a great question, which is existential. It's literally an existential question. And they've, you might be shocked by the answer that I'm about to give, specifically in business and in accruing wealth and money. You may not be a billionaire by the end of this journey. As soon as you check out when you're 100 years old, you're not going to be like, I'm a billionaire. That's awesome. But you will be, whatever I accomplished in this life, I am happy and I feel fulfilled. And the reason is that when people are accruing wealth, unless it's sort of like a mistake, like let's say someone started a company that just, he was solving a problem and she was solving a problem, and then people saw value in it, and then they just got bought out for hundreds of millions of dollars. It's like, well, now what? I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people that grind to accrue wealth. That grind is not coming from a holistic place. That grind, that unending 20-hour work days, pushing the envelope, just grind, 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 that's not coming from a place of satisfaction and stability and happiness and all the things that people really want. Because what they believe, and this is very general, and I'm sure everyone has a take and everyone has a perspective, and I respect all of them, and I would love to chat about it with anyone, if someone wants to talk about it. um, that money is a tool. It's a tool to maybe achieve happiness, satisfaction, and whatever it is. But the fact that they're trying to accrue it at unimaginable numbers, like if you were very objective about it, I don't know the numbers, but let's say someone had, I don't know, $15 million, stuck it in an account, and said, I want to get a couple of percentage points and just live. You can do that. You can. And yet we have people and that are just, and many people, and it's fine, I'm not judging them, that are looking to accrue hundreds of millions and billions, and that's good. It's great for them. It works for them because they feel better, as they go through life, and that's fine. But that's not the objective in life. The objective in life, our journey is not how much money can I make. Our journey is how much good can I give to the world? How much positivity can I spread? How much can I grow as a human being? And when we look at it that way, potentially you'll change your perspective. You'll change your goals, because in the beginning you'll say, I want my goal to be $1 billion a year, I don't know, of revenue, which I guess if you own, I don't know, a massive corporation, you could do that.
Yeah.
But after a while, when you start really discovering more about yourself and more about what drives you, you change from a pain driven why to a more purpose driven why. And the pain driven why is very myopic. It's, I need to resolve this pain, so I will do everything that I can to resolve this pain. And that can be hurtful to other people. It can be hurtful to myself, my health, my relationships, everything. But I will resolve this pain no matter what. I will lash out at people. I will work 20 hours a day, which is unimaginable energy that the person is putting in. But I will also burn out. I will feel unsatisfied. I will never be happy. I will never feel all those positive things. Or maybe I'll try to find it, but I'll catch flashes of it and I'll be like, oh, maybe this is the path. And it's very challenging. But when we learn more about ourselves and discover more about what drives us and what we really, really want, what is that money going to get us? Then we may not decide by choice to do that as hard anymore. So we might start not working 20 hours a day, instead start off with 19 hours and 30 minutes, and then 19 hours and 50 minutes, and slowly
Yeah.
taper off, because we're like, this is not making me happy. And this happened with me too, even as a principal, where I was like, I need to change education, I need to change the world, and I need to help every single child over here in every single aspect of their life. So I was working 18 hours a day. I would come in the morning, early in the morning, and set up the day, and make sure that everything was set up. I don't want to get to the details of it, but whatever it was, stay very, very late, set up the next 6 months or whatever it was, and make sure that everything was going well, and speak to the parents, speak to the teachers, speak to all the community uh, logistical people, and it was a big job. And I would come home and I would just like drop into bed and be like, oh wow, I am completely drained. And the difference, that the big shift that happens is when you realize, like, wait, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I'm trying to fix the world? Why am I trying to fix the world? I can't. Technically, possibly someone can change the world, but it's 1 in 8 billion are going to change the world, right? Or one in, I don't know, one in, let's say, a billion. You have like 8 people maybe today that are changing the world, right?
Yeah.
So that's not a reasonable goal. It's a great goal, but it's not really reasonable. If we would really, and again, I'm not judging it. It's a great goal. Someone that wants to change the world should go and try if that's what they really want to do. But they should stay open and curious to that journey and see if that's really what they want, and also to enjoy the journey, to understand that the journey is the destination. When we're doing that, then we are bettering ourselves, bettering others, bettering the world, bettering our communities, bettering our families, bettering our relationships. And it's all intertwined. When we're doing it in our business, if we're doing it in our family, we're doing it in our friends. And when we make that switch from that pain driven purpose, which is limiting, as we said, because it shuts off the rest of what you want, to a purpose driven why, and you become more instead of reactive to proactive. You go from resolving the things that are hurting you to redefining and self actualizing to what you are capable of. And that is a completely different wavelength. It's a completely different plane of existence. Because even if, yes, it's challenging, of course it's challenging. Everyone has challenges and everyone goes through speed bumps, and it's hard. But it's not devastating if something goes wrong. It's not demoralizing if something goes wrong. It's something that we look at and we go, okay, so this is fine, because we're not tying our worth to resolving something. It's more of we want to achieve something. Okay, so we'll be more resilient because we're achieving something. We're not going to burn out, because when we have these goals and we understand what our goals are and the whole entire theme of our goal, so all systems are a go. We're not burning out because we're emotionally present in everything that we do. So we're not burning out anymore. And again, of course, it's a journey, and we will burn out because it's hard to find that balance. So we'll burn out, but then we get out of it faster, and we start seeing it in advance. So we'll burn out much less, and we'll be more calm and more relaxed and more present and more purposeful. And it's a very different existence. So if you want to talk about a relational or social growth, that will accelerate tremendously. Your family life will be a million times better. Your friend life will be a million times better. Your community life will be a million times better. Will you make as much money? Potentially, maybe, if that's what your purpose is. If you feel like your purpose is to actually change the world and to make a lot of money in order to change the world, then maybe you will. But you'll also do it in a more present place, and in a more curious place, and in a more compassionate place. And I would venture, and this is something that they have studies on. If you want to look it up, if someone wants to look it up, it's something called trauma-driven, I think, productivity. I don't remember the exact term, but when people are trying to resolve something, they have a lot more push and more grind than if they're not, because
Yeah.
there's just less presence in the moment. So they're like, I'm just push, 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 push. And that's a thing too. So people that are resolving that, they suddenly find themselves not grinding as hard. So I think that answered your question. It's very long, but I think that did.
Yeah. And I think, like, as you were saying that, I really, what what popped in my head is, I think that was the wrong question. Not necessarily the wrong question of what I wanted to
No
ask,
wrong
but
question.
right. But the real question that we probably have to ask ourselves is, what does high achiever mean? And it doesn't, you said, like, if you're going to make the most money that you can possibly make, then it requires something different than having, sort of achievement in necessarily your family or relationships or whatever. Like, I think that it's it really made me think, like, okay, that's, we often associate high achiever with someone who made a lot of money, which is true. That is a that is a
Yes.
version of a high achiever, but there's also, other areas of life to be
Yeah.
to have to achieve big things in. So I think your explanation sort of helped me, like, sort of redefine that for myself. So that was great. Well, I want to switch gears. I want to ask you the questions that I ask every guest, and the first one
Sure.
is, so it's always, it's based on the name of the show, but I like to ask every guest, what is your why? You talked about the moving away from pain type of why, and then I think you phrased it more eloquently than I did, but I just want to give you the opportunity to sort of talk about your why, and what's important to you.
Sure. So the funny thing is that, as I said, when you're on this journey, it may change. And I found my why changing because when I first started, 10 years ago, my why was very different than what it is today. But I'm very happy with that. And I understand that that is part of the why. Like, maybe one day we'll all understand the why. Maybe everyone will understand the actual real why. But in my limited view of what I bring to the world, it changes constantly. So my why right now is really to help people, as many people as I can, to experience the feelings of transformation that I've felt in my journey. And as I continue my journey, I will continue to elevate that feeling. As I said, I've been doing this for a little more than 10 years. And I look back and I'm like, I was a different person. I don't look at it judgmentally. I just look back and observe it and just say, like, I was a very different person than I was, today. And then I look back 7, 5, 3, last year, a month ago, and I look back and I'm always happy to report. Then I put in a little bit happy and I'm like, I'm a different person. And I feel good about that after the fact because I'm changing and I'm growing and I'm always learning and staying curious. So the more people that I can help find that, we can go back for a moment to the previous question, like what do people want a lot of money for, right? Because we say, like, that's the high achiever. We said it's really because they want to have the freedom. They want the freedom to choose. They want the freedom to be happy and
Yeah,
to be present and to
yeah,
be relational and all those things that they feel money is going to give them that option. I feel that almost all the time, regardless of what's in my bank account. I don't look at my bank account and tie it to that. I look at the moment that I drive my daughter to school, or the moment that I sit with my wife and talk to her, or the moment that I'm hanging out with a friend with no ulterior motive, the moment that I'm standing outside on the street corner just shooting the breeze with a neighbor. And I don't feel like there's another pressure for me to do something else because I'm present in the moment and I'm happy to be there. And that is a tremendous, you know, mindset shift that not many people have made that I want to help those people. So my why is to help people achieve that amount of presence and grace to themselves and to the world and empathy and curiosity that I've achieved and that I hope to continue to achieve because it's a never-ending journey.
yeah. That's amazing. I think, the ability to it's being a high achiever maybe comes down to, just just that helping other people being helping other people achieve, that's really, kind of spreading it and almost exponentially magnifying that impact that you can have. I think is just uh, probably that really the highest achievement that we can have.
That's true. That is very true.
Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, just anything to let listeners know you a little better.
I I love to sing. I sing at weddings, and
Oh,
I like
cool.
to sing in my synagogue, and it's put a lot of work into that too. And I've actually taken a lot of concepts from learning to sing as well, because it's a discipline. Um, and you learn a lot about yourself when you become proficient at something. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is when you see people that are not as proficient as you go through a certain inner journey from when you first become, like, it's sort of like, first, obviously it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. You learn a little bit and you're like, okay, I know everything, and I don't need to learn anymore. But then you learn a little bit more and you're like, holy moly, like, I know nothing. And then you sort of stay in that realm where it's like, okay, I just need to keep learning more, and that's fine. Right? That's basically the journey that people go on. And when I I would say that I'm a pretty proficient singer. And when I listen to other people singing, in the beginning, I would be very judgmental in my mind. I'd be like, oh wow, like, that person really has to. Oh, he went off key over there, and oh my god, he has to work on that, or he has to really open his mouth more, or have more support, or whatever it is. And now I just observe, and it was part of my journey in this realm of mindfulness, and in my I was also, as a principal, I was the basically the COO of the school, and
Yeah.
that was really what my expertise was in operations and systems and processes. And all of that also, when you are seeing people that are not as proficient as you, to go from judgment to observation is a journey. It's a long journey, and um, it's very gratifying to be able to do that. So I like to sing. That was answering your question.
That's great. I love music in general, and I think um, I really equate music with joy, even even though even the music that may not have, maybe the lyrics are about something painful, but to me, I feel like that is an outlet that person was able to use in a
Hmm.
productive way, rather than doing something that could be harmful to themselves or others. And so I've always just music has always meant a lot to me. So but yeah,
That's
again,
very
that comes
powerful.
back
That's a
to
great observation.
yeah the well, and it what you said about sort of observationally, I like I don't actually know like when kids are at what age they would develop voices, but like you sometimes hear, you see those TV shows about like amazing children, and there's like a 3-year old singing opera and whatnot. And so I like my kids seemingly do not have good singing voices at this point, but at first it was kind of like, oh, I wish they, but it's like, no, I just see how happy they are when they're singing something that like it doesn't matter. I don't care like pitch and what, and so it's just it makes me happy to see, it makes me happy to hear people sing, whether they're you know nice voice or not nice voice. Like I think it's just music. I mean, I don't like. It's funny because we talked about sort of changing the world, I don't think I don't think anyone would be like, oh, Kurt Cobain had an amazing singing voice, but he created essentially an entirely new genre of music when
Mhm.
Nirvana came out. And so it's like they just anyway. I think,
He
like I
changed
said,
the world. He
I
changed society for
yeah,
sure, in a
he
massive way.
for sure. So it's kind of like you don't it doesn't, like you said, it's like looking at it from a non-judgmental standpoint. It doesn't have to be, doesn't have to fit in that box of like perfect, right? It doesn't have to be the perfect voice. It has to resonate with people. And I think that's just kind of the messaging of probably virtually anything that does change the world. So, David, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch?
So the best way would be hitting me up on LinkedIn. I also have a website, but I'm pretty active on LinkedIn certain times of the day, and definitely just shoot me a DM or connect and shoot me a DM, and happy to chat anytime.
Awesome. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate having you on the show. I appreciate everything that you shared. This was, I think, really can help a lot of people, and I do encourage them to connect with you. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question? One question before we go.
Sure.
Yeah. What's like one thing that we chatted about today that really resonated with you strongly, that we could leave people with?
I think it's the curiosity, the sort of maintaining that curiosity. It's been something that has become more front of mind, with my kids and seeing their curiosity and like I said, I think life tends to kind of suck some of that away from us, or make us feel like it's not okay, and so just to hear you talk about that and see how relate that to actually having better relationships, having even success in business and things like that. I think it's a very powerful tool to use once you start doing that. And I have felt like the more I do it, it's almost like compounds. And so I think hearing you talk about that has been something that's definitely resonated with me, and sort of reignited my passion for doing that too.
Cool, awesome, and the name of your podcast definitely lends itself to that idea too, because I don't know if we can ever know our why, but definitely to keep asking why is just the straight path, So
yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, and I've joked about changing the name of the podcast to The Evolution of Why, because
that's great.
Because people, it does change over time, right? Your why when you're 20 is not your why when you're 50. Like it's just not going to be the same always. So I've talked about that, but folks listening, I know you're going to get a lot of from this episode. Make sure you connect with Dovid on LinkedIn, and please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get excellent guests. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?